All right, guys, we're back with episode 58 of the Hyperworks podcast. Myself, Alex, Jake, and today's guest is Karl Vandenberg. Did I get that right, Karl?
You did? You got it right?
Yeah, cool. Vandenberg is Dutch, or?
It is, yeah. Yeah, Flemish. My dad
Yeah.
was from Belgium. I grew up in Ireland, but I have the worst Irish name. Karl is a German first name, and Vandenberg is a Dutch
Oh,
last name.
you're actually born in Ireland, or you just grew up
Yeah.
there?
Born and raised in Ireland, yeah.
Oh, really? I used to go there as well as a kid. My parents took me like all over. I've been to every like province. Which city in Ireland?
Dublin.
Oh, Dublin,
I,
right? Cool,
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Dublin, then County Wicklow. So lovely spot, lovely part of the world, and I go back there. I still
Yeah.
have my family's there, so I still go back there a lot.
They used to take me to the west, like Galway and
Yeah,
Limerick,
Galway,
like all these
yeah.
kind of places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It
there's
takes
one
quite a
place
strong
they took.
accent, though. So how
Huh?
long have
Yeah,
you lived in
it's
the
still-
States?
Yeah, no, it's been a long time. So, I mean, I also lived in France and Italy and Switzerland and the UK probably like a dozen years. So, and then about 20 years out here. So it's been a while since I actually lived in Ireland, but
Yeah,
so I go back multiple times a year.
Alex,
I get
think
that. I get that. I've been in Asia for 10 years, and people say they can still get the Scottish. I'm from Scotland originally, so I can still.
I get your Scottish
turn-
accent. Yeah, I got
Yeah,
that.
I can turn it on. Like I can turn on
Yeah.
if people want.
See, I can't turn on my Irish accent anymore. I think I never had a
Uh.
particularly strong one, so maybe that's part of the challenge. But yeah, I think my wife wishes I had a stronger Irish accent.
Nice. Can you just talk about how you managed? Can you just talk about how you ended up going to the US? Maybe like
Yes, yeah.
because obviously you started in Ireland, so we can
Yeah,
go into
no,
that.
it's a journey. The summary is, though, I guess I did. I started at technical, so I was did a physics in Trinity in Dublin, and then I took a year out sabbatical, went to France and worked in McDonald's and taught English. Got a French girlfriend, learned the language, and then I went to the UK. I did a master's in computer science in Imperial. And then at that time, there weren't a lot of jobs in Ireland or England, but I had French guys in my class, and they said, "Hey, there are a ton of jobs for engineers in France." So I ended up going to France and working in software development as a developer. And then through a number of different, jobs, and I traveled again and did another degree in Florence in Italy in humanities. But then I ended back in France, and I worked for an international software company called Business Objects, which was in analytics, and they were dual headquartered. And so I was working out of the Paris headquarters in product marketing, and they had a job opening in product management in Silicon Valley. And so I got the opportunity to come over with that company to Silicon Valley, and I've been here for 20 years now.
Were they bought over by SAP?
Correct.
It rings a
Yeah.
bell. Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of the I think the big European success stories when it comes to software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically,
I've been here for 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so you were obviously, you've got your computer science background, but your kind of product marketing was your kind of bread and butter when you were kind of in
it
your early
was. I
career.
mean, I've done different, and since I've been here, look, I'm not a career marketer in the sense that I've done and run different functions. So, but at heart, I would say I'm a product marketer. So I've been a GM a few times. I've done M&A. I've done corporate strategy, product management we talked about, and obviously started my career as a developer. But at heart, I consider myself a product marketer in the sense of I love the intersection of the technology and the market. And then, being able to translate the value of the technology to the market. And I do think that product marketing is it's a difficult domain. It's one of those skills, and I know I'm currently looking there's any vice presidents of product marketing out there, I'm looking for a vice president of product marketing. It's a hard role to fill, because I think you can, a lot of people are good at technology, obviously, especially here in Silicon Valley. What is I find hard is being able to translate that in a really simple, unique, differentiated way to the market. That skill, the communication piece, is hard to find those two things together. So, as I said, I honed my skills as a product marketer in Paris under a great CMO at the time, Dave Kellogg, and he's got quite a following on Kell blog. He's now working for a VC. He was the CEO multiple times, but he was an incredible mentor coach in the skills of product marketing, and that really has helped me throughout my career. So that's kind of, where I am. And currently, I should probably say for the audience, I am the CMO of a cybersecurity company called Illumio.
Yeah, and just to quickly touch on the B2B, B2C, was there any reason you kind of gravitated towards B2B? And I just want to set a little bit of context here, because I watched a video with Brian Chesky today, and he was talking about the fact that there's not enough people doing consumer. Like it's very risky doing consumer, versus B2B is obviously more about like bottom line. Was that a conscious thing, or does it just something just happen?
It wasn't a conscious thing. It was really, I guess, when I started, and as a developer, I said I was working for a services company. It was building software, custom software for other businesses. So I kind of started my career in the B2B space, and then from there, the opportunities that arose were more B2B. And once you get into that space, if you're looking for a job in consumer marketing, is quite different, right? Especially at scale, than B2B. And so it's hard to change, even if I'd wanted to. It'd been hard to change, right?
Myself and Jake, we're coming the other way. So our background's B2C. We've come out to Asia and done B2C tech, Alibaba and some other companies.
How is that?
And it's very different, as you can imagine. It's completely different. And the B2C thing is obviously a lot more fashion and kind of news cycle driven. It's quite quick in terms of the pace. And obviously now, we're working a kind of longer time horizon. But I do think B2C has things that you can borrow and apply to B2B that, they probably give you an advantage in the long term.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I do. I mean, I think in general, it's always interesting to try and look at other domains to cross-pollinate ideas or approaches. And so certainly B2C in many ways is ahead of B2B in certain things, because as you said, it moves faster. And it's a little bit more fickle, of course, trendy. And so, but there are things that we can take from B2C into B2B. And I think one thing for me, in particular B2B, sometimes is that it can get a little bit boring, right? It can get a bit heavy,
repetitive as well, maybe. Yeah,
or corporate, or because you're there's a sense that you have to play a little bit safer as well, and so therefore it ends up being kind of very meh. Right. It's and so we've tried to consciously do things that are different, that are kind of break the mold, in order to stand out, because there is a lot of noise in the market. But when everyone is doing the same thing, it's obviously very hard to stand out. So what can we do? What we think a lot about that. What can we do to be different? There's value in being different.
What kind of things have you done to be different?
So one of them, which is can be a little bit risky, but that's why I guess not a lot of people do it, is we try to use humor in our especially like in our brand videos. So and obviously it's humor is like a fine line, but as I say to my team, I would rather people really not like it or really like it than they think, oh, it's fine, right? If you get a strong reaction, as I said, any publicity is good publicity, right? If you get a strong reaction, you will be remembered. So in our videos, like I've done videos where uh, uh, one of the campaigns was called Pants Down, and it was basically, and it was trying to get across the idea that a lot of people are oblivious to the fact that they're exposed, right? It's the cyber. And so you had this office scene where people were walking around in suits and ties or blouses and whatever, and they all had boxer shorts on. So from the top they looked fine, and then they were all just like walking around in their boxer shorts. And the idea was again to get this concept of they were essentially walking around exposed and not realizing it. And so, as you can imagine, that took a little, especially with HR, that took a little bit of work to get out the door.
Yeah.
But we did it in a tasteful way, and it turned out to be an incredibly, incredibly high performing campaign. And the last one we did was, which is on our website now, is essentially a bunch of elementary school kids. And little kids are just brutal, and they can be like brutally honest and no filters. And so they're having a conversation. They're doing like a quotes career day, and so they're talking to a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, and he's explaining how great a job he's doing, and they're basically tearing him down. So again, it's pushing the envelope a little bit. But these kids were fantastic. We did all this filming in how we hired actors and everything, so it was all very professionally done. But it's again super high performing campaign. This is just something that's different.
Okay. I've got a question. So you're in this marketing domain, and right now you're in an intersection of marketing and technology in so many places. But right now there's a lot of explosion of different tools. I mean, we literally had the OpenClaw Maltbook go crazy last week.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about this because of the data exposure and also the volumes of data that these kind of tools absorb. And we don't just have to focus on that particular use case. There's also a lot more open source technology out there on the market, and that's really available to marketers to kind of growth hack the system.
Yeah.
What are your opinions about this as somebody that sits on the intersection of those two different domains?
Look, I love change. I love new opportunities that get created with change. And obviously, we're living in a time of unprecedented change. And obviously, technology and AI is a big driver. And without getting into all of the specifics, I do, and we're at a very high level. I'll tell you how we're approaching it with my team. So the biggest, I would say, challenge for us, and probably for any organization right now, that's established. I'm not talking about people who are just starting, but an established organization, which we are. We're about 1,000 people. Is that it's people management, it's change management, because you're used to operating one way, and now you have to shift. And so a lot of our focus is actually on the change management. Is how do we get people to think AI first, right? What can we eliminate, from a process? How can we streamline and automate? I'm really trying to drive within in the team a lot of automation through AI, and that there's a ton of tools, as you said, like that are coming into the stack. obviously AI is coming to all of our existing tools, but then there are new tools that are, that we're looking at, because the marketing tech stack has not changed that substantially in a couple of decades, right? Most companies, you'll find it's like Salesforce, Marketo, or HubSpot, or some equivalent, right? And then you've got some other tools. ABM, right, has come out in the last few years, is probably now a standard part of the stack. But other than that, it hasn't changed. And with AI, there are products that are kind of essentially looking to rewrite the complete stack. And so we're very on the edge. So we're doing actually design partnership with the co-founder of Marketo on his new AI company that will essentially displace Marketo, because Marketo was built for a very different world. So I'm excited. I think there's huge opportunity both in how we operate, the efficiency I talked about. There's really two things I'm looking for: driving greater efficiency through automation and removing all of that grunt work and letting the team spend their time on creative, strategic things, like actually make their work even more enjoyable. And then the second is driving greater conversion in the funnel. And what I mean by that is, because as you're talking about, Jake, there's so much data out there, we can better understand our buyer, where they are in the market, and do true, one-to-one marketing at scale, which has always been the nirvana. Now we actually have the technology that would allow us to do that. And so driving greater conversion in the funnel, those are the two areas of focus that we're applying our AI efforts to. And we can talk about the challenges too as well, which I'll get to in a minute, but I'll pause there to see if you have any follow-up.
I've a lot. I'll give you the long story short for me. I used to have a marketing agency that did campaigns, all kinds of campaigns, public relations campaigns, which I worked with Alex on, also social media, influencer marketing, all kinds, advertising, etc. Yeah. And in about December 2023, I realized that ChatGPT was catching up to everybody. And at that point, I pivoted out of doing a traditional marketing agency, and now I'm a partner agency for a company called Make.com. You might be familiar with them. And basically, I believe that because I think that all product managers in the future will be automators of some description. And I think the roles of developer and product manager or project or marketing manager are effectively all merging into a space that's automated. So if you can understand the systems and how to build them, then your advantage is that you understand how to automate that operational process. And they're the type of people that are sort of the next level of potential product manager in a company, where you can understand how to better orchestrate to build hyper-personalization at scale. I pivoted into that. So yeah, you're talking to the right person. I completely 100% agree with you. I think our audience would probably know my answer by now, but I'll give it to Alex. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I installed the Open Claude thing on Telegram today, so I was playing around with it, and it's a very interesting place where we are right now, because a lot of people, I guess 99% of people have never opened a terminal in their life. They've never written a prompt in a terminal. And even though I've done that, I decided to go down this route of using Telegram. But it's actually surprisingly good. Like, it's actually pretty good just on Telegram. So yeah, I think like once there's like a platform for people, I don't know how it's going to take shape though in companies, right? Because you can't just run this stuff in Telegram. So maybe you can talk about like how are your staff, like your people, going to be able to do this inside the company, as opposed to people like me in Telegram.
Yeah. So look, I think so. We'll talk about some of the challenges. I would say, obviously, being cybersecurity, clearly there's concern, and in fact, that's a whole other narrative, which is AI is making cybersecurity a lot more challenging. So that's a whole thing. And obviously, when it comes to data, as you know, and then just the access, and so it's kind of scary that these things, it's also, a huge opportunity, right? If you can get them to these agents essentially in these platforms to do all of this work for you, that means that they need access to everything, and that's also a little bit frightening. Right? Is they have the keys to the kingdom and they can do pretty much anything, right? So I think the obviously, especially when you get to larger organizations, it is the risk, compliance, security, all of these things that are going to understandably, slow things down a bit, and that, we do need to be very careful about how we implement and leverage these. And so we have internally, obviously, we have an IT team, a security team, and everything gets vetted through those teams, legal and compliance, before we can deploy, right? So we as I prefer personally, ChatGPT over Copilot, and right, even though they're the same code base, and there's others, obviously Claude and etc. But as a company, we've adopted Copilot because of the security and compliance. And so I think that will obviously, that's one area that you need to consider as you're deploying AI platforms. The other thing I'll say, which is unrelated to that kind of internal concern, is I'll go back to marketing and sort of the negative of AI, which we are seeing, is that because it is so easy to produce content, we're obviously getting flooded with subpar content, and um, and I think that is a risk for organizations. And I'm a big believer in brand and brand authenticity. We talked about being different earlier. I believe that you can lose your way in this AI world if you give up too much of your uniqueness and creativity to AI. And so one of the things that we try very hard to do is we try to be very authentic to who we are, to have a strong position, and to pay a lot of attention. And I'm always of the mind it's quality over quantity, really focusing on quality in whatever we do to set the bar high, and have a unique position, and a way of communicating. So those are some of the considerations on AI. Very exciting, but a lot of things right now to work through.
I've got two things to say. First thing, I think that the feed algorithm, let's say LinkedIn, we all probably use it in this
Yeah,
conversation. What gets engagement might not necessarily be the best quality of content, but it is also because the algorithm is
yeah,
optimizing for engagement. So
yeah,
things like selfies, some of them may be questionable for the platform of LinkedIn. And also comment here to get my 10,000 templates. Also,
yeah,
those won't work. It's not
yeah,
amazing quality of content, but because it either drives attention for certain reasons, or it drives attention because it's creating a fear of missing out within the market,
yeah,
they appear higher. So I'm completely with you on the quality
yeah,
aspect. However, I think that the feed of these platforms is also optimizing for attention and engagement, and that's also degenerating the quality of the content
yeah,
that you might get exposure to.
yeah. It's a good
Um,
it's a good point. Yeah. It like there's probably a way to marry the two, right? Again, do something that is different, interesting, that will get engagement, but has substance to it. And that's kind of the line that we're trying to walk, right? But ultimately, I believe that, and this is back to the brand, and especially in today's world where we are starved of trust and authenticity, there's very low levels of trust, and kind of that aspect of the human element is obviously disappearing as well as we get more disconnected and digitized. the fact that everything is quotes fake. So this idea of being authentic, having an opinion, uh, and that will stand, in my view, that will, when you're associating with your brand, that will stand the test of time. Because at the end of the day, but it's a bit of a long game. And that's, back to your point, Jake, this, if like you're going after the immediate, hey, I need to get clicks, you're not necessarily thinking about the long game. And maybe in the short term, it'll have an impact, but longer term, I believe that, if there's no substance behind it, will be detrimental to the brand.
I hope you're right. But to counter that argument, Cluely, about how long ago was Cluely, Alex? Do you
A
know?
couple months ago, yeah, a couple months ago, I would say they
This
started.
Y Combinator. Were they in raising at Y Combinator before?
They weren't Y Combinator. I think the guy applied was first star, but not the second one. No, not clearly.
Okay. They did a PR stunt where basically they had the founder of this AI startup company posing, we'll say, on a sofa with a lady. And it looked very bad. I mean, intentionally, it was made to look like they were engaging in an activity, and it went viral, and they got millions of dollars of funding.
The context was it was a date. So while she was talking, asking questions, he used his software with some glasses to bring up the information on the glasses, like a Meta Ray-Ban type situation. And so he was able to answer all of her questions on the glasses, and then he asked his AI, like, what should I say? And that was the whole kind of shtick. And
it was the third-party photograph that really went viral. It wasn't the actual campaign. It was one of his team had taken a photograph of him on the sofa.
I see. Yeah. Well, look, again, these and who's to say where that will go, right? I think I'm in it for, as I said, the long game, and it doesn't mean that you can't do things. And actually, look, I'm all for, and I've told my team this multiple times, because I talked about being conservative or overly conservative, especially in cyber. You were like, we have to be careful. But I keep telling my team, I want you to get me to say no to something. So I keep trying to get to be more provocative, even controversial. And we will this year, we're going to have a pretty provocative campaign in the market, because I think the cyber market is broken. And so we're going to be very black and white about, kind of feels like, we're playing the role of the kid in the Hans Christian Andersen's, tale, the Emperor Has No Clothes. Because if you look at cyber, to speak of cyber for a moment, if you look at cyber, for decades, we've been spending more and more money every year. $250 billion worldwide last year, right, on cyber. The problem that we're solving for, cybercrime, is getting worse every year. Last year, $12 trillion worldwide, according to Forrester. So we're spending more money every year on a problem that's getting worse every year. So clearly it's not working. And so we are going to have, we're in the midst of creating it now. We're going to have a campaign to try and shake the industry up and have a candid conversation that what we're doing is not working. In order to be effective, again, we have to do it in a way that's going to get people's attention. So I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I do believe in being, I said, provocative, as long as there's substance behind it.
What do you, just maybe some kind of thoughts on, like, I'm not an expert in cyber, but like I did watch a documentary on the Palantir recently, and I know they kind of blur a lot of the boundaries in terms of government cyber, but what's your take on what they're doing, like in the way they kind of go to market and with their products?
Well, talk about authentic. I love again, the CEO founder is like super.
Yeah, he's out there, right?
Right? He doesn't mince his words, which I love.
Yeah.
Again, our CEO is kind of like that. We've kept him under covers a little bit and going to make him a little bit more visible in the market. He's a New Yorker and he curses a lot, and so it's like it's very refreshing. So I like that, and he's obviously got a very strong vision, right? And people will disagree with his politics or whatever, but obviously he's built a very successful, very impressive company. And again, it's somebody who has a vision and a point of view and is not afraid to be who they are. And that's the piece, again, that's the piece about authenticity. I believe, be yourself as a company or be yourself as an individual. And some people will like it, but guess what? Some people won't. But as you know, you can never please everybody. So you might as well be yourself. Doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
And that goes for being, a company and a brand too.
There was a bit that went viral online this week, and it was I think it was at Davos, and the JP Morgan guy, Jamie Dimon, he walked
Yeah.
up to the Coinbase guy and apparently pointed at him and said, "You're full of shit." Like, and they printed that in the Wall Street
Yeah.
Journal.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Jamie Dimon doesn't seem to have yet gotten on the crypto bandwagon, but again, hey, this Brian Armstrong was probably the CEO of Coinbase. Was that?
Yeah.
So both.
Yeah, I mean,
Both,
if the guy running the biggest bank in the world can be himself, then any other CEO should feel
absolutely.
the
And
same.
Jamie Dimon is fantastic. As is Brian Armstrong. So I'm all for, as I said, and it's hard for people to do, right? Because everything, back to being fake. We all want to
Quick change of direction. Would you guys do a Super Bowl commercial? I know it's coming up. Would you do a traditional marketing play like that, or?
I wouldn't do Super Bowl simply because if our technology applied to that audience or broad audience, it would make sense. And at this stage where we're at, we're mostly large organizations, large governmental or industry organizations. But we are going to do more what we call out of home this year. So more like billboards and the like, which we haven't done a lot of as a company. So we're going to do more of that because I do think the time is right for the company. We're sort of late stage pre-IPO company. And then also the time is right in the market. The market is coming towards us because back to what I said about the cyber being broken, we kind of have to go back to first principles. That is because this, AI cyber war that we're entering into is so asymmetric to the attacker. In other words, the attacker has the upper hand. It's very hard for defenders to keep up. You've got to go back to first principles. And the first principles are understand where your valuable assets are and make sure they're segmented, to use a technical term, on the network. They're segmented so that if anyone gets into your network, they can't get to your valuable asset. It's kind of like basic. And that's what we do. That's what Illumia does. We segment companies' networks so that the attacker gets in, and guess what? They will get in. They can't get to your valuable assets. And so they can't do ransomware or they can't do data exfiltration. And so we believe we're kind of at the right time where we can go bigger on awareness. And so we'll do airports and billboards and things like that.
Alex, I think it's time, Okay, Karl, brace yourself. This is this is the segment. This is the final question of the show.
Okay.
Brace yourself is a big one. It catches people off guard. It's future predictions. Could be anything.
Okay.
Could be your life. Could be the world. Could be your work. What are your future predictions?
On any dimension.
In any dimension.
All right. I love these types of questions. So my future prediction is the human is going to become more important. So we're obsessed with technology and AI, and as we talked about, I and there's a role for that, and then we'll do a lot of amazing things. we are, and the human being more important is there's a good and there's a challenge to it. Like, so you imagine a world where essentially you've got, AI and robots doing everything, and we're not that far away. Certainly here in San Francisco, we see cars driving around without drivers all the time. And it's kind of like, it's still a bit surreal, but it's just, they're nearly becoming more common than taxis. And so we're not far away from a world where AI and robots will be doing a lot. And so we as humans are going to have to figure out what we do. And because for most of us and for most of history, work has been the center and has given purpose. And yes, people will complain about it, but at the end of the day, it does give purpose, which is why when people retire, they often struggle because they've lost that purpose. And so we're going to have this at massive scale. And so we are going to have to go through a bit of a transformation as a species, and understand what it is to be, how do we find purpose without a job necessarily? And so we're going to have to become experts at being human, which we're not at today, if you look at our history. And so I think that for me is the prediction. It's going to be, and I tell my kids this, right? All of the human qualities are going to become more important, even in the short term, right? Forget the very long term where I said we're not working. In the short term, the human qualities are going to become more important. So your character, your ability to be resilient, to be creative, to be curious, these are things that are going to be defining of the people who will be successful in the new world.
Alex, we end on
Yeah, I actually, just a quick thought on that. Like, I think that's almost counterculture to the narrative that humans are becoming less important, with
Yeah,
all
and
the stuff that's going on.
yeah, I think it can be symbiotic, but that's up to us. I think there's something uniquely human that only humans can do, and I know that everyone says no, super intelligence is going to take that away. I don't believe that. I believe super intelligent computers are always going to be derivative of what's existed. Some derivative be new, but it's essentially based on the data that exists. Humans have this unique ability to kind of have these quantum leaps that are disconnected, discontinuous. And so that, I think, is something we need to cultivate.
It's good.
Okay.
Let's check back in a couple of years' time, maybe, Karl, and see where we're at with that.
Yeah, good luck with being human.
Appreciate
All
it.
right. Cheers.
All right,
That was a
enjoy the
good combo.
conversation. All right,
Thank you.
Thanks,
take care.
Karl.
Bye.
Cheers.